parties are also being urged to ensure that their campaigns remain issue-based, peaceful, and within the provisions of Nigeria's electoral.
As political activities gather momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections, former head of state and chairman of the National Peace Committee, General Abubakar Abdulsalami, retired. As regards political class against character assassination, personal attacks and inflammatory rhetoric, Abdulsalami, who was represented by the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Martin Luther Agwai, retired, gave the advice in Abuja at the signing of the National Peace Accord ahead of the official commencement of campaigns for the presidential and National Assembly elections. Moreno Haniel has the rest of the report.
The Peace Accord, organized by the National Peace Committee in partnership with the Kuka Center, seeks to commit political parties and candidates to peaceful, responsible and issue-based campaigns. The former head of state expressed concern over the growing tendency of political campaigns to abandon manifestos and policies for name-calling, insults and attacks on the character of opponents. He warned that such rhetoric could poison public discourse, inflame political tensions, and create an atmosphere capable of triggering intimidation and violence during the electoral process.
It is an accord that calls on political parties and candidates to compete fairly on the issue of ideas, policies, and programs, debate opposition views respectfully, mobilize supporters peacefully and responsibly, protect voters and respect electoral institutions, and reject hate speech, incitement, misinformation, and other forms of spiteful narrative that will lead to intimidation and violence.
Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Joash Amopitan, called on political parties and candidates to make issues, policies, and programs the center of their campaign ahead of next year's polls. He said the National Peace Accord provides a framework for fair competition, respectful debate, peaceful mobilization, and the protection of voters and electoral institutions. He urged political actors to reject hate speech, incitement, misinformation, and narratives capable of triggering violence and undermining electoral integrity.
For the 2027 general election intensify. We are witnessing a disturbing shift from policy-driven engagement towards character assassination, identity-based provocation, and inflammatory rhetorics. If left unchecked, this trend threatens to poison the public square, erode civil trust, and ignite avoidable conflict across our societies.
The Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, was represented by Umar Nadada, said the credibility and peaceful conduct of polls are not determined by election day alone, but depend largely on the conduct of political parties, candidates, supporters, and other stakeholders throughout the electoral process. The police chief therefore called for political campaigns to be a contest of ideas, policies, programs, and competing visions for the future of the country, rather than a platform for intolerance, incitement, ethnic polarization, or violence.
A political campaign should be a contest of ideas, policies, programs, and competing visions for the future of our country.
Bishop Matthew Kuka urged political party leaders, presidential candidates, campaign councils, and spokespersons to make the concerns of Nigerians the center of their campaign, warning them to shun fake news, personal abuse, and inflammatory statements. With the 2027 campaign now in motion, stakeholders are demanding new standard of political engagement, one driven by ideas, accountability, and issues that matter to Nigerians. Moreno Haniel for Skyline News.
We so much appreciate your reporting, Moreno. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has assured Nigerians and political parties that it will not favor any presidential candidate or political party in the 2027 presidential election. INEC Chairman Professor Josh Amupiton gave the assurance as political activities intensify nationwide and parties begin mobilizing supporters ahead of the polls. Mohammed Musa completes this report.
Says its responsibility is to provide a credible and transparent electoral process in which every candidate and political party is treated fairly. The assurance comes at a time when political parties are stepping up their preparations and candidates are beginning to reach out to voters across the country. INEC is expected to play a central role in the organization of the elections, from voter registration and the release of electoral guidelines to conduct of the polls and declaration of results. The Commission has also called on political parties and their supporters to respect the electoral process and avoid actions capable of undermining public confidence. The issue of electoral credibility is expected to remain a major subject of discussion as the election draws closer. INEC says it will work within the law and provide the necessary environment for Nigerians to exercise their constitutional right to choose their leaders. I am Muhammad Musa.
Nationwide campaign as political parties intensify mobilization ahead of the 2027 general elections. The ruling party is expected to take its campaign to states and communities across the country, with President Bola Tinubu administration's economic policies and infrastructure programs expected to feature prominently in its message to voters. Oyiza Deneka now brings us more.
The ABC is expected to use the campaign period to highlight what is described as achievements of the Tinubu administration since it assumed office. Economic reforms, investment, infrastructure development, and efforts to improve government revenue are expected to form part of the party's campaign narrative. The ruling party is also likely to face questions from voters over the effect of economic reforms on households. The ruling party is also likely to face questions from voters over the effect of economic reforms on households, particularly the rising cost of essential goods and services. Security will equally feature prominently as political parties seek to convince Nigerians that they have the right strategies to tackle terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and other forms of violent crime. The APC's nationwide mobilization will see party leaders and supporters engage with voters at different levels as the party seeks to consolidate its political strength ahead of the presidential and other elections. The coming months are therefore expected to witness increased political activities across the country than a for Skyline TV News.
Nigeria's opposition political parties now face a major challenge as preparations for the 2027 presidential election intensify, with political leaders under pressure to present a strong alternative to the ruling All Progressives Congress. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi remain among attracting national attention, but questions remain over the ability of the opposition parties to unite behind a common platform.
The opposition landscape remains highly competitive, with several political interests seeking to influence the direction of the 2027 presidential contest. Atiku Abubakar, who contested the 2023 presidential election, remains a major political figure, while Peter Obi continues to command significant support following his performance in the last presidential election. However, the absence of a clearly consolidated opposition structure could make it difficult for the opposition to present a single candidate capable of challenging the APC's nationwide political machinery. The ruling party is expected to capitalize on its incumbency and organizational structure as it campaigns for President Tinubu's re-election. For the opposition, the major challenge will be convincing Nigerians that it can provide effective solutions to the country's economic and security problems. Issues including inflation, unemployment, insecurity, and the cost of living are expected to dominate the debate as voters begin to assess the different political options ahead of the 2027. I am Muhammad Musa for Skyline News.
The federal government, states, and the 774 local government councils have shared a total of 3.007 trillion naira from the Federation accounts for the month of July. The latest allocation represents one of the highest monthly distributions recorded this year and is expected to provide additional financial resources for 3 tiers of government.
The revenue sharing comes as governments across the country continue to grapple with increasing financial obligation and the need to fund infrastructure and social services. The increase in federation revenue is expected to give states and local governments additional resources to meet their immediate responsibilities, including the payment of salaries and implementation of development projects. For the federal government, increased revenue could provide additional fiscal space for the implementation of ongoing programs and projects. However, the distribution also comes with expectation from citizens who want to see greater accountability and improved services delivery from government at all levels. Analysts have continued to stress the importance of government using increased revenue to support productive activities, improve infrastructure, and strengthen essential services. The latest allocation is therefore expected to attract renewed attention to how governments manage public funds and the impact of federation revenue on development across the country than
The federal government says it is taking steps to strengthen Nigeria's security and information environment ahead of the 2027 general elections. Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, says government remains committed to creating the conditions necessary for peaceful, credible, and transparent elections.
The assurance comes as political activities begin to gather momentum across the country, with parties and candidates expected to intensify their campaigns in the coming month. Security agencies are expected to play a crucial role in protecting voters, electoral officials, political candidates, and election materials during the electoral process. The government is also expressing concern over the growing spread of misinformation and disinformation, particularly through social media platforms. Officials say false information and inflammatory content could create tension and undermine public confidence in the electoral process. Political parties and their supporters are therefore being encouraged to verify information before sharing it and to avoid messages culpable of inciting violence. As Nigeria moves closer to the 2027 elections, the government says security and responsible information management will remain central to its efforts to ensure a peaceful and credible democratic process. I am Muhammad Musa for Skyline News.
The federal government is set to evacuate another 83 Nigerians from South Africa amid renewed concerns about the safety of Nigerians living in the country. The returnees are expected to arrive in Nigeria as authorities continue diplomatic and humanitarian efforts to protect citizens affected by xenophobic tensions. We're taking a quick break now on the news. We'll have more stories for you shortly. Do stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. President Bola Tinubu has challenged Nigerian authorities. Universities still move beyond predominantly certificate-based education system and focus more on producing job creators. The president says universities must prepare students for an economy increasingly shaped by technology, innovation, and artificial intelligence (AI). The call comes amid concerns about graduate unemployment and the growing gap between academic qualifications and the skills demanded by employers. Let's turn to Kano State now, where the government says it has launched a 27.8 billion naira ICT and computer-based testing project aimed at expanding digital examination facilities across the state. The initiative is designed to take computer-based examinations and related digital infrastructure closer to students, particularly those outside major urban centers. Officials say the project is expected to improve access to digital learning and examinations while helping students become more familiar with technology-driven assessment. On a side note, at least 570 people were killed in 596 security incidents recorded across Nigeria in July, and that is according to a report by security intelligence firm Sari Global. The report identified rural banditry, terrorism, and other violent crimes among the major threats recorded during the month. The figures have renewed concerns over Nigeria's security situation, particularly as the country approaches the 2027 election season. The growing threat of school abductions continues to raise concern across Nigeria, with terrorist and bandit groups now using kidnapping as a tool for ransom and psychological warfare. Recent attacks have highlighted the vulnerability of schools in parts of northern Nigeria, where students and staff remain targets for criminal groups. Security agencies also face increasing pressure to protect educational institutions and prevent further disruption of schooling in communities affected by insecurity. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has arrested 80 suspected drug offenders during raids on drug joints in Kano State. The agency also dismantled 16 locations described as notorious drug joints during the operation. The operation forms part of efforts by security and law enforcement agencies to disrupt drug trafficking and abuse, which officials say contributes to crime and insecurity. Delta State has inducted the SSV Kali 3 security seaport vessel as part of efforts to combat oil thefts, illegal bunkering, and other maritime crimes. The vessel is expected to strengthen surveillance of waterways and protect critical oil and gas infrastructure in the Niger Delta. Authorities say the initiative will complement ongoing security operations aimed at protecting Nigeria's energy assets and reducing crude oil losses. Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu, has urged the Nigerian Army's Combat Service Support Corps to strengthen logistics support for military operations. The Army leadership says effective logistics remain essential to sustaining troops and ensuring operational readiness. The directive comes as the military continues operations against terrorism, banditry, and other forms of insecurity across several parts of the country. We have more stories coming your way shortly, including foreign entertainment and sports. Please don't go away. This segment of the news broadcast now returns with business, where Nigeria's Federation account has recorded a significant revenue increase in July, allowing the three tiers of government to share 3.007 billion naira. Statutory collections rose by 658.09 billion naira, while gross VAT revenue recorded a slight decline during the period. The increased allocation provides additional fiscal space for the federal government, states, and local councils as they grapple with rising expenditure and development needs. Nigeria's crude oil production has continued to rise, with production reportedly reaching about 1.67 million barrels per day in July. The improvement comes amid efforts to reduce pipeline losses and strengthen security around oil producing areas. The increase is important for government revenue and foreign exchange earnings, with oil remaining a major source of Nigeria's dollar income. Nigeria's National Economic Council has approved the refinancing of an oil-backed financing facility linked to NNPC Limited. The refinancing package is valued at about $4.5 billion, that's according to Reuters, and aimed at restructuring existing oil-backed financing. The move comes as Nigeria continues efforts to strengthen the finances of its petroleum sector and improve the country's fiscal position. The cost of living remains one of the major economic issues confronting citizens in the country as Nigeria enters another election cycle. Although government reforms have attracted investor interest and improved some macroeconomic indicators, households continue to face pressure from high prices and reduced purchasing power. The economic situation is expected to become one of the biggest campaign issues, with political parties likely to offer competing solutions to inflation, unemployment, and household hardship. On the foreign scene, U.S. President Donald Trump says there are currently no talks scheduled with Iran, despite statements from Tehran suggesting that Washington is seeking negotiations. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has accused the United States of wanting to negotiate after failing to achieve its objectives through military pressure. The conflicting statements come as tensions remain high over the war and the status of the strategically important Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz remains at the center of growing tensions between Iran and the United States, with both sides giving conflicting accounts of the situation in the strategic waterway. Washington maintains that the waterway is open, while Tehran says it remains under Iranian control. The dispute is being closely monitored by global energy markets because the strait is a major route for international oil shipments. At least 6 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, as according to Palestinian health officials. The attack came shortly after U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy, Jared Kushner, concluded a regional visit aimed at advancing efforts to end the war. The latest violence has raised further concerns about the prospects of a durable ceasefire, despite renewed diplomatic efforts to bring the conflict to an end. And coming back to Africa, Liberia has agreed to accept as many as 1,200 third country deportees from the United States over the next 12 months. The first group, reportedly numbering 20 people, is expected to be transferred under the new arrangement. The arrangement is part of a wider U.S. effort to find countries willing to receive deportees who are not citizens of the receiving nations. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Hyun says U.S. President Donald Trump's actions appear to be putting pressure on Seoul over Iran and investment issues. The comments come amid broader diplomatic tensions surrounding the U.S. conflict with Iran and Washington's efforts to secure international support. South Korea is expected to balance its relationship with Washington with its own economic and security interests as the international situation develops. And now time to take a look at sport. Former Manchester United and Juventus midfielder Paul Pogba is set to leave Monaco after the French club agreed to terminate his contract. The decision comes after a difficult period for the midfielder, which has included a series of injuries. Pogba's departure now leaves the former World Cup winner facing another major turning point in his career as he considers his next move. Arsenal could consider offers for young England internationals Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri if the right opportunity emerges. Club chief executive Richard Garlick said Arsenal is not actively seeking to sell the two players, but would consider departures under suitable circumstances. The development is likely to attract attention from clubs monitoring Arsenal's young talents as the new European football season gets underway. On the home front, Nigeria's Super Falcons are expected to have a new head coach before their 2028 Women's Olympic qualifying campaign begins in October. The move follows the team's disappointing WAFCON campaign and growing calls for changes in the women's national team setup. The new coach will face the immediate task of rebuilding the squad and preparing the Falcons for the Olympic qualification campaign. We'll take our last break on the news. When we return, we'll go lighter on this broadcast. Do stay with us. Let's turn to entertainment. Nigeria's very own queen of Afrobeat, Tiwa Savage, has reached another massive career milestone after official support. Our reports confirmed her groundbreaking global deal with Sony Music Entertainment. This major move expands her international reach, giving her unparalleled creative direction and distribution power across global territories. Industry insiders are already calling this one of the most lucrative deals for an African female artist this decade, setting a brand new benchmark for Afrobeats on the world stage. A Nollywood powerhouse, Funke Akindele, continues her unstoppable dominance at the cinemas as her latest blockbuster release, The Market Queen, has officially broken the all-time opening box office record in Nigeria. Tickets sold out across major theaters nationwide over the weekend, surpassing her previous record-breaking releases. Industry analysts attribute this unprecedented success to the film's gripping storytelling, vibrant cultural accuracy, and Akindele's unrivaled marketing genius across the border in West Africa. Well, that's steady progress for a lady who started from the very scratch. Thank you for watching. That's a roundup of our news here on Skyline in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. On behalf of my colleagues who have made this broadcast possible, I am Uyi Agmofwegbe. I appreciate you for keeping us company.
Watch Skyline News on MyComSat and Free TV. Stay connected wherever you are by streaming us live on the Free TV app available for both iOS and Android devices via the App Store and Google Play. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Skyline TV News for breaking news, updates, and exclusives. Content. For more information, visit www.skylinetv.ng. Skyline News, beyond the headlines.
You can watch Skyline News on NightComSat and Free TV. Stay connected wherever you are by streaming us live on the Free TV app, available for both iOS and Android devices via the App Store and Google Play. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Skyline.